Hey everyone, and welcome to Legal Yes, where we break down the biggest celebrity legal cases of the week with certified family law specialist and senior attorney Rachel Bennett. Starting off with Scott Wolf, a judge has dismissed his case against estranged wife Kelly Wolf for allegedly violating a restraining order. The Utah court granted the motion as part of a global resolution, and all protective orders are no longer active as their ongoing divorce battle continues. So Rachel, what does it mean that the case was dismissed without prejudice?
So when charges are dismissed without prejudice, it means that the criminal case is over for now, but the door stays open. Prosecutors can refile the same charges at any time in the future, and most commonly that happens if the person reoffends or engages in even more criminal conduct. Here, the dismissals happened with Scott's cooperation and with the court noting that the parties are working towards a global resolution, which is a strong signal that both sides are trying to stabilize things and resolve this outside of the criminal court. But dismissing the case without prejudice still protects the victim, and the leverage here is real. There's an unspoken message that if this behavior continues, those charges can come back into play.
Now, with all protective orders now inactive, are there any legal restrictions still in place between Scott and Kelly?
There's definitely still legal restrictions in place, and some strong ones too. Back in December, Scott asked the court to dismiss the temporary restraining order that barred Kelly from contacting him or contacting the children. And once that order was dismissed, the family court orders that preceded that restraining order will now control. So that means that Scott still has sole custody of their 3 children. Kelly's contact with the children is still supervised, and both parents are going to be bound by strict conduct rules, including no social media posts about this case and no publicly disparaging the other party.
Now, how might these dismissed cases affect the divorce timeline or negotiations going forward?
Speaking as a divorce attorney, it's incredibly difficult and sometimes impossible to negotiate a settlement when one party is actively struggling with a serious mental health issue. Oftentimes they're not rational, they're not in a regulated state of mind, and you can't meaningfully negotiate with someone who doesn't fully understand what's going on or can't make normal, reasonable decisions. In this case, Kelly has been receiving significant mental health treatment since September, and these dismissals may be a sign that she's now in a place where she can actually participate in resolving the divorce. By dismissing the restraining order and not pushing to prosecute her criminally, Scott is strongly communicating a desire to work with her rather than to throw the book at her.
All right, moving on to Haley Kalil. She is asking a judge to dismiss ex-husband Matt Kalil's lawsuit over comments she made about their sex life, arguing her remarks are protected by the First Amendment. In court filings obtained by Us Weekly, Haley says she was sharing a truthful, personal account of her marriage. A judge has not yet ruled. So Rachel, how strong is a First Amendment defense in a case involving comments about a former spouse's sex life?
People hear First Amendment and they think it's a shield for anything you say, and it's really not. The Constitution protects opinions and speech on matters of public concern, but it does not automatically protect broadcasting intimate details about a former spouse's anatomy all over the internet. So even if what she said was true, the question is whether those details were private, whether they were highly personal, whether they were shared without consent. And if they were, that can support an invasion of privacy claim. And the truth doesn't necessarily provide her immunity here.
So could this case realistically settle, or is it likely headed toward trial?
I think both sides have strong incentives to settle and not let this case go to trial. First of all, I don't think either of them are going to want to participate in a public trial where they would have to rehash the details of their former sex lives. They've been divorced for about 4 years. He's remarried. It just would be uncomfortable for everyone. Matt's suing for $75,000 of damages. And while that might seem like a lot of money, the reality is that he could easily spend that in attorney's fees just to take this to trial. So the ROI on this will start to disappear as they get closer to trial. I think it's likely that the lawsuit was a way for Matt to take back some of the public narrative around this topic. He's now been able to state publicly that his position was that these comments were not okay, that they embarrassed him. And if this case were to settle, I would expect that settlement agreement is probably going to include a gag order to prevent any future public disclosures by Haley, which seems like it might be a fair resolution here.